when I look back at all of my exes, okay, every single one, the beginning was the most special. And then it got progressively less special. I don't know. Like, when it comes to remembering my exes, the fondest memory I have with every single one is the beginning stage when it was new and it was exciting. And I think the goal, at least for me, is to eventually be with somebody where the fondest memories go beyond that beginning stage that is sort of magical, but also, well, but horrible. It's actually horrible in the moment, but it is sort of magical. I have a really hard time with when certain people copy me. Now, I don't care about being copied for the most part, especially because I'm on the internet. And if like somebody sees something that I do and is like, oh, I want to do that. And, they're, a consumer of my content. I'm like, that's great. Copy me all you want. But there are certain times when I hate when people copy me. I'm going to be honest. Okay. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that, this is morally fair, but I'm just being honest that this is something that I hate.
Criticism with the podcast has always been like, I do not think it is the environment for anyone to be pondering and questioning the philosophical meanings of life or just like tropes, whether love exists or not, in their bed by themselves. Because the whole point of it is that you want feedback from somebody who doesn't have the same opinion as you, right? Or can provide arguments to things that don't. Like, as a child of divorce, it's not interesting to sit a room full of people who are all children of divorce to talk about why marriage doesn't last. We all have the same experience. I'm not going to learn anything from them. It would be more interesting to be in a room of 50% people who are children of divorce and 50% people who are not, to talk about like, what are the merits of marriage? And you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's like, she's kind of created this echo chamber for herself. I think you need to have somebody else in the room with you. Like, that's kind of the point of it. And even if you guys don't agree with one another, it's the point that you can like challenge each other's perspectives, which is why I do agree with you. I think a book club would be one of the smartest things she could do. Because she can still stick to those themes and explore those themes, but be reading a book by Alan Watts or be reading Atomic Habits by James Clear and be like, oh, this is something this person defined and outlined. This is my personal experience with that phenomena or with that subject. Because then, even if it's a solo podcast, there is this introduction of another opinion.
Hi. Hello. So, remember when I said in my Cameron episode about how we kind of feel entitled when we consume media and to expect the media that we consume to like have to just simply be a whole representation, just solve all of our problems, from like complex characters when we really want static and like perfect looking characters in general. That also goes for the celebrities and the influencers that we consume, right? Y'all know that, right? Because I'm confused. This has been going on for 2 years, but like, why are we still hating on Emma Chamberlain? Why are we still hating on Emma Chamberlain's podcast? I'm confused, you guys. Yeah, it's 2025, and I'm still seeing some videos, some little comments, criticizing her podcast. And it's getting to the point where it's minimal now, as it was 2 years ago, when it was like more of a conversation, more on TikTok than anything else, because I saw a clip of her podcast on TikTok, and you guys just saw it now, where she was talking about something about remembering her exes, and people are taking it completely out of context, and they're basically like saying the same criticisms that people have been saying 2 years ago in 2023. Yeah. To give some background history. Okay, so Emma Chamberlain started her podcast in February of 2020, and it's been going on since then. And about November of, I don't know, like late 2022, she got an exclusive deal with Spotify. And starting as of early February of 2023, she's been having a deal with Spotify, 2 episodes a week, Thursdays and Sundays. And she did a whole shift from basically like lighthearted surface level topics to the types of just like easygoing topics that fans loved so much that made the podcast even popular, because around that time, like earlier, it won a People's Choice Award, and like it started getting more sponsorships, and Anything Goes started to make her more money, because she was also like juggling both podcasting and YouTube at the same time. So while she was doing YouTube, she was also doing a whole podcast with her old podcast company Ramble, which she also did a separate podcast a year prior to Anything Goes called Stupid Genius. So when the new chapter of Anything Goes started in 2023 in February with the Spotify deal, she shifted from the more lighthearted topics to the more deeper or like philosophical type episodes. Those episodes to her audience were like a hit and miss, it seemed. And I didn't get into the podcast until summer of 2023. So I don't really have a strong distaste for that chapter of Anything Goes. I've listened to old episodes of Anything Goes, and I think that the podcast in general is a decent podcast. So I don't really have many complaints. But like the critiques I've been seeing, the more understandable critiques, the valid critiques, and the more critiques that she actually did take some to heart, because it's obvious that she saw those videos. She knows what's been going on with the podcast in general. You're going to hear that soon, because what I'm doing right now, I'm just giving y'all a little overview. I'm going to let y'all hear her side, because obviously you did, but I'm just going to show it anyway. And I'm just going to end it off with a creative rant. I know this. Making this episode, it's just unnecessary, but it's just simply ridiculous. So let's just discuss. The episodes, looking back, were a hit and miss, it seemed like, because obviously her heart didn't obviously seem that into it. She was kind of like trying to like seem more deep, and some episodes were fine. Although, well, I'm starting to realize what I guess like the straw that broke the camel's back that started this whole thing was her episode, Is Romantic Love an Illusion? That was the episode that really did start the entire criticism, like avalanche of like backlash of Anything Goes. That was the episode that really did start this whole can of worms. So the reason why she made that episode is a few weeks ago, I think a week prior to that, in October of 2023, she was dating role model, also known as Tucker Pillsbury. He is a musician. And then earlier on in 2023, they hard-launched their relationship with the GQ interview, and did a whole interview with GQ, did a whole couples quiz on their YouTube. And when they broke up later on in October, it's obvious that Emma was very kind of like going through it in her own personal way, and we all process breakups very differently. We don't know when did they break up, but I guess it's just kind of coincidental. It's kind of funny how people heard the news, and then probably like a few days later, she uploaded her episode, Is Romantic Love an Illusion? And she kind of gave kind of like a take on romance that not a lot of people agreed with. And she kind of like pondered if romantic love in general was kind of like an illusion in itself, because maybe, like, again, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's kind of like a gray area. That take was kind of like a gray area, because it's a mixture of like her own personal life. Being a child of divorce, I can relate because my parents are divorced. So my views on romantic relationships may be viewed as more both cynical and also realistic to an extent. But it was because of this episode, it sparked this huge debate on whether the fact that Emma is just simply out of her depth. She should just simply go to college. That was the main criticism. She should just go to college. She's in her echo chamber. And all the episodes prior to Anything Goes in that whole span of the year 2023, people have just not been they just weren't fucking with it, because people have been noticing one of the critiques saying that she goes on tangents. She shouldn't really be discussing philosophical topics because she's not a philosopher. She's a multimillionaire, and because she lives this high celebrity life that we know of, even though she basically just sits in her house working, doing whatever. All of these critiques are coming from her old audience that are growing out of her. It's iffy because it's a mixture of entitlement behind those critiques. She kind of switched back to her original style, but more improved. But yeah, I feel like if she wanted to go into philosophical topics, she can outline her podcasts even more better, if that was the direction that she wanted to go in. And I guess more interviews, because she did do interviews with some people, some doctors and stuff. What makes the whole discourse around Emma Chamberlain's podcast so surreal is the fact that a lot of these comments are it's getting a little misogynistic, because for the simple fact that there are many male podcasters who have plenty of topics that are kind of not that deep in general, because every male podcast is kind of the same. They don't talk about deep topics. Not a lot is expected. So even though Emma Chamberlain herself made the whole overview about the show not meant to be super deep, so why are people expecting it to be deep? And it's just a whole comparison to Brittany Broski, saying that she's the only solo female podcaster out there. And even though I guess other female podcasters like Alex Cooper and her own podcast company Unwell and Call Her Daddy, it's interesting that a lot of female podcasters, just women in business in general, they constantly have to prove themselves. It's just a lot, just to prove that they're successful. Whereas male podcasters like Joe Rogan, they can just simply have just shit topics, just simply have shit episodes, and not everyone's gonna talk shit about it. It's also just kind of interesting how people have to compare Emma and Brittany as if there only has to be one solo female podcaster. There cannot be multiple female podcasters in the industry. Let's just see what Emma has to say about it. Even though you probably have seen it already, I'll just show it anyway, and then I'm just gonna have another creative rant, because this is kind of annoying me a little bit. So anyway, let's just do that.
Anything Goes for me started as this low pressure place where I could just talk about whatever I wanted to a much smaller audience than what I had on YouTube, Instagram, etc. It was honestly more like a hobby for me than anything. The whole thing was very intuitive. I would just talk about whatever was on my mind that week. I mean, similar to what I do now, but it was much more casual. I didn't really write out outlines or anything like I do now. I write out outlines for my episodes now so that things feel more cohesive and less jumbled. It was a very casual, fun thing for me. And by some miracle, Anything Goes started to succeed a bit more. And I won a People's Choice Award, and all of a sudden, people are listening to Anything Goes, and it didn't really feel like that for a long time. And it was weird for me because this was just sort of my little side hobby. This wasn't something I really was putting a lot of thought and effort into. And it was kind of a shock to the system when it started succeeding in a way. And from there, I became a partner with Spotify, a company that I had admired in the podcast space for such a long time because, they're really pushing the podcasting world forward by supporting podcasters, etc. Now, all of a sudden, I have a deal with them as well. And I started to feel the pressure like, oh my God, this can't just be my little side hobby anymore. That's just a fun, low pressure place for me to shoot the shit. This needs to be something more now. Why? Because it's getting attention. I need to live up to this level of attention. And I'm somebody who's very prone to imposter syndrome, which means I don't think I deserve the things that I have. So I tend to have a more chaotic response to success than other people. Some people are like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, great. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But because I have imposter syndrome and I feel like, oh, I don't deserve the success that I have, I tend to feel pressured to then live up to that praise, to that success. And that can cause me to derail from what's working and try to elevate things in a way that at times doesn't feel like me, to try to match the praise that I'm being given. And so that very much happened to me with Anything Goes. I had this intense imposter syndrome identity crisis about Anything Goes. And I made the decision to elevate the show, if you will. I changed the podcast art from a little doodle of me sitting in bed with my cats to this gorgeous, crispy photo of me looking in a mirror with a new, more mature font and all of these, different things. I wanted the show to look chicer. I started recording in a small little studio in my house. I made a little studio with a little couch bed thing, and I had my whole recording set up, and I had a camera set up because in addition to this new sort of studio situation at home, I also wanted to do video episodes so that you could watch the podcast as well as listen to it, to make the experience more dynamic, to also elevate the show. And in addition to that, I started having guests on the show, a lot of specialists in various fields, also some celebrities, also some family members, also some friends. And in general, I just started discussing more meaningful topics to me. And I will say the more meaningful philosophical topics that I started discussing were partially caused by this desire to make the show more meaningful, give it more gravity in a way. Instead of talking about things that were more surface level, I wanted to talk about deeper things to make the show feel more elevated. But also, I think that I was also going through sort of an existential crisis in my life at the same time. So I think the switch in subject matter kind of had a dual cause. And it's sort of hard to pinpoint why that happened. But I definitely think a large portion of why I shifted the subject matter to being more serious, more philosophical, more meaningful was definitely because I felt a pressure to. I felt like if I don't make things more serious, then people won't take me serious. And I won't live up to the level of praise that the show's been getting. But what's interesting is I expected making all of these changes to make me feel more confident in Anything Goes, make me feel like I've earned the praise that I had received. But what happened was the opposite. I felt misaligned with the identity of the show, and it didn't really feel me anymore. And I was proud of certain parts of the show. Like, there were certain maybe more meaningful, deeper episodes that I was really, really proud of. And they really felt like me. And I was just enjoying talking about these things. But there were also times when I would make maybe a more meaningful philosophical episode, and it was sort of forced in a way. I was trying to upkeep this level of conversation, and my heart wasn't always in it. And I don't know, it was sort of like 75-25. Like 75% of the time I was like, yeah, this feels really good actually. But then 25% of the time I was like, this really feels off. And again, I think that part of that is because I was forcing myself to make things more meaningful. But then I also think it was because at the same time I was going through this existential crisis in my life where I was disconnected from myself for a period of time, which happens to literally everyone. in their 20s. If I talk to any elder in my life about their 20s, all they'll discuss with me is their various existential crises, etc. Like that, it's so common. So I remain unfazed by that fact, but it did impact some of the episodes. They didn't feel quite right. They didn't feel quite me. And I also started to notice that, you know, recording episodes by myself with the camera on was starting to psych me out. Like, for some reason, I was having a negative psychological reaction that I did not anticipate to having the camera on for all of my episodes. I had lost this feeling of intimacy with the microphone. What I loved so much about podcasting when I first started was the fact that there was no camera on me, was the fact that I was just talking into a microphone like I was talking on the phone with a family member or a friend or whoever. I had lost that feeling of being on the phone because the camera was on. It's similar to like being on FaceTime versus talking on the phone. I recently experienced somewhat of a long distance friendship, shall we say. And I was talking to this person a lot on FaceTime, right? And it was kind of nerve wracking. Like, I always was thinking about like, oh my God, what do I look like? The lighting in my room has to be good. Like, there were all of these added thoughts that went into my conversations on FaceTime. And then at one point, we both decided we should just talk on the phone instead. Like, why are we FaceTiming? This is just annoying. And I found that our conversations got better because we were eliminating all these variables that were causing, I assume, both of us to overthink these surface level elements of our conversation. You know, the lighting, what we're doing. Like, I like the fact that I can be on the phone with somebody and my lights can be out and I can be laying flat in bed and they wouldn't know any different versus having the camera on, being on FaceTime and me feeling like, okay, I can't lay down in bed flat with the light off. That's weird. They see that. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's the same vibe with podcasting. I found having the camera on for solo episodes for me, it just doesn't work as well. I don't feel as disarmed. I don't feel as open. I'm thinking about too many other things. I'm distracted by the bright light that's in my face when I'm talking. I'm concerned about whether or not the video camera's turning on or off. I miss the simplicity of just talking into a microphone and that being what a podcast is. And I realized that the desire to elevate in that way didn't really make sense for my solo episodes. For interviews, sure. I don't mind having the camera on. For some reason, the conversation that I'm having with the person I'm having a conversation with is distracting enough that I'm not paying attention to the cameras. But I mean, I also think too that my interviews I do at the Spotify studios and there's other people taking care of the cameras and the lighting and all of these things. So I'm not really paying attention to it. But anyway, I realized that desire to elevate didn't really make sense for me at all. And when it comes to having guests on, I do love talking to people. And so I think that's a part of Anything Goes that I want to keep going. But I even have my doubts about how I want to do that. And I'm still sort of figuring that part out.
When you are an artist / creative, you are very used to the idea, you're very used to the assignment of making whatever you're working on, the final product of whatever you're creating, look completely effortless, like anyone else can do it. And it's very typical of people who consume content from our favorite TikTokers and YouTubers, mostly YouTubers, to expect them to just simply stay the same, which is just completely ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The entire discourse of Emma Chamberlain being out of touch with her audience and how she just needs to go to college and just basically insulting her intelligence is just plain mean. And it's just sexist. And also just simply comparing her to Brittany Broski, like I said earlier. That's just, it is what it is. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just plain mean. It's just sexist. Just saying. She just wanted to go into a different direction she thought would be good for Anything Goes when she did that deal with Spotify. And she was also going through a whole existential crisis. It's typical. It's understandable. And she just did what she thought was going to make the show good. and it just didn't work out. No big deal. Not the end of the world. But as a creative, you often go through phases of constant reinvention and trying to like try new things, and sometimes it's just a hit or miss. Like anyone who is in a creative field or just wanting to try something new in general, like you don't have to be in a creative field, but you understand, like, to an extent, like, especially when you're a creative, you just constantly go through constant reinventions of like implementing like new like things you want to like create and see if it's gonna work. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a big deal. It's just a hit or miss. That's just the reality of the situation. Sometimes what we do creatively is a hit or miss. Sometimes the content you create doesn't have to be grandiose to be entertaining to people. Podcasts don't have to be super like researched and like, and so like jaw-dropping, like Alex Cooper, Color Daddy, like esque, like vibes to be interesting. If that's how you want to go with your like content, then go for it. But also, there's also like another side where sometimes like podcasts can be casual. It can be more simple, easygoing. That's why we have it's just a spectrum of like content that you just simply enjoy. And Anything Goes is just simply a more casual podcast. It doesn't have to be like all that. And I don't know. And if that's how she was trying to go, like maybe those things would work. But that's not really her plan. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be so grandiose and like, I don't know, groundbreaking all the time to be interesting. Sometimes the simplest of things can be interesting. And it's true because Emma has built her brand on YouTube making more relatable and simple content that a lot of girls her age could relate to. And obviously, money has changed her relatability, but fame hasn't really changed her that much. Like, she's still a similar version of herself to how her old viewers saw her back then. She's still Emma. She's just growing and evolving. She's just growing up. And maybe her old audiences just have grown out of her, but she can be relatable to other younger people. So it's just simply like you just simply grow out. You've grown out of Emma Chamberlain. That's just it. You just grew out of her. And that's fine. That's just fine, you guys. And as for the college comments saying that she's just simply dumb and that people are kind of having, I don't know. It's just people having some kind of like attitude that they could do her job better just because they went to college. It's very elitist. And it's just simply mean. And if we want to go there, Emma is a multimillionaire who built her brand from an early age since she was 16, has changed the internet forever. She has a coffee company. She works with brands, hosted the Met Gala with Vogue, I think 4 times. Like, and she also has like an exclusive podcast deal. And I'm just saying, if we want to go there, like, what have you done lately? Like, if we want to go, like seriously, it's the elitism. It's the arrogance in in those comments that I saw back then that really kind of like irked me a little bit. It's really that the attitude that they can just simply do Emma's job a little better than her because they're college educated. College is not for everybody. That's all I'm going to say on that one. And even though the comments on her podcast about like people saying she goes into tangents and she can just simply outline her podcast more, those are understandable critiques and valid. And the other half of people who just simply don't like the show, they're just not really vibing with it, it's just not really for them, there's no reason to be a dick about it. You can just simply turn the podcast off. You don't have to listen to it. You don't have to make it the center of your universe. Like you're just torturing yourself at this point. At the end of the day, Emma is just going to do what works for her. And the podcast is still going well for her. It's still going good for her, especially this year since she brought back video to her podcast. And she's making a small return to YouTube. That's good. Good for her. And she's rediscovering herself. And even though the new episodes haven't really been working even though some new episodes, like that episode about her talking about why people hate celebrities, was kind of like no one was really like vibing with it because it just seemed like satire. And also the collabs with brands like Amazon and Skims, like the sponsorships, those brands sponsored the podcast, Amazon and Skims. Some people are not really fucking with that either. Understandable, especially the Skims one, because I'm not a big fan of the Kardashians either. But sometimes in those situations, I'm not really like judging her on that, because on one hand, you can't really expect someone to feel your anger, and maybe Emma just isn't really like studying. She's not really like looking that deep into the Kardashians. Like, she's not really like studying them too deep. That's my assumption. I'm not really like holding her up to a pedestal. I'm just like, it's just possible she doesn't really think about them that much to do that much deep thinking about the Kardashians, like whole brand and vibe in general. And even anyway, it's important to remember that her podcast was never meant to be super serious or analytical. And even though she went into a philosophical, deeper topic direction, like, it just didn't work out. But like now she just simply it's okay to change your mind as a creative. And we can just be a little bit more nicer when we're just simply giving more critiques on like people's work. We can be a little bit more nicer. Again, it was never really meant to be that serious in the first place. Like the title says, anything goes on that podcast. Anyway, that's kind of all I have for today. So, thank you guys for listening to Let's Discuss. You can find the podcast on Spotify, anywhere you stream podcasts. You can follow the podcast on social media on Instagram and TikTok at Let's Discuss Podcast _ all lowercase. You can follow me, Nick.Marshall02, all lowercase, on Instagram for more updates of the show. And also, if you just want to just put a voice to the face, see your gracious host on Instagram. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. And it was just a nice talk. It was kind of like a casual episode. I'm not really feeling that energetic. I'm not really feeling that energetic right now. But it's been a nice talk. It's more of a casual episode. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. If you made it this far. Alright, bye.